The Garblin's been swinging a hot bat of late, 7 for his last 15. Here's the 2-1. Deep to left. That ball is gone. The crowd loves it. I've never heard this much generic Goblin noise.
Hey gang, using the promo code MTGMuddstah, one word, all caps, will get you 10% off orders of $10 or more at Flipside Gaming, Original Magic Art, and orders of singles at Multizone. If they don't have what you're looking for, you could check out TCG Player and use my affiliate link to help support the channel. Looking for a way to bling out your deck and not spend a fortune? Alter Sleaze can help with that, and you can help with the channel at the same time by using my affiliate link. Or, if you're looking to join the Goblin Gang, you can always support me through Patreon. Today's game has Mark playing Slimefoot, keeping Renata, Sword of the Anime, Sacrifice, Pharika, Second Harvest, Swamp, and Forest. Derek is playing Mogis, keeping Hour of Devastation, Acidic Soil, Night's Whisper, Soul Ring, Bajuka Bog, Castle Embreth, and a Swamp. Chris is playing Morophon, keeping a Soul Ring, an Ancient Tomb, Mana Confluence, Progenitus, Elemental Bond, and Undermine. I've borrowed Derek's Kadena deck, keeping a Forest, Ugin the Ineffable, Island, Wayfarer Swordtooth, Stratus Dancer, Thieving Amalgam, and a Fabled Passage. I get lucky and win the die roll, and start us off. I play an island, passing. Chris plays a Mana Confluence, losing 1 life as he taps it to cast a Soul Ring. Mark plays a Forest. Derek plays a Swamp, and he casts his less shiny version of Soul Ring. I drop a Swamp, passing. Chris plays an Ancient Tomb, and loses another 1 from his Mana Confluence as he casts Elemental Bond. Mark plays a Swamp, and casts Sword of the Animist. Derek gets lucky, drawing a Mountain, and is able to cast Mogis in his main phase before passing to me. I have no choice but to take the 2 from Mogis on my upkeep, and then I draw for turn. I play a Forest and tap 3 mana for a Wayward Swordtooth. This lets me play another land, and this time it's an island. Chris loses 2 to Mogis, draws a card, and then passes. Mark follows similarly, losing 2, drawing a card, and also passing. Derek draws, playing an untapped Castle Embreth for turn. He then casts Zozu the Punisher because what good is having friends if you can't make them hurt themselves, and he passes turn. I take 2 from Mogis on my upkeep, and play a Swamp, taking 2 from Zozu, and then a Fabled Passage, taking another 2. I then bring out Kadena, and cast a free Morph creature for my turn, drawing as it enters, and then passing to Chris. Chris takes 2 in his upkeep from Mogis, and then another 3 in his main phase as he taps out for a Gilded Lotus. Mark takes the 2, and still hasn't found a land. He moves to his end step, discarding Massacre Worm. Derek plays a Foreboding Ruins as his land drop for turn, taking 2 from Zozu, and revealing a basic from his hand to keep it untapped. He then casts a Night's Whisper, taking 2, and drawing 2, before paying to cast a Rakdos Signet. We then see an interesting hate card, Acidic Soil, which deals damage to each player based on how many lands they have. Chris and Mark only take 2, while Derek takes 4, and I take a sweet 6. Moving to combat, Zozu helps even the damage out by hitting Mark for 2. I untap and lose my 2 to Mogis, casting a Morph creature in my main phase. I get to draw a card from Kadena seeing it come in, and I sacrifice the Fabled Passage, finding a land and taking another 2. I cast Ugin the Ineffable, and I uptick him to exile my top card and make a Spirit token or whatever it is that'll put that card into my hand once it leaves play. Heading to combat, Kadena and the Wayward Swordtooth, as I now have City's Blessing, go to Combat City, smacking Derek for 8. Chris untaps and takes his 2, slamming down the newly drawn land he found. He takes 2 damage from Zozu, and then taps some mana, losing 1 from the Confluence to help cast a Verdant Sun's Avatar, gaining 5 life as it enters the battlefield, and he then passes to Mark. Mark takes his 2 and sadly still has no land to play, but is able to cast an Animate Dead. This brings back the Massacre Worm, which decimates my side of the board, and also takes out Zozu. I take 6, while Derek takes 2, and Mark passes. Derek plays a swamp for turn, and Chris realizes he should have drawn from the bond, which we let happen. Derek then casts an Hour of Devastation, which wipes the board, and we all take some damage as the Massacre Worm sees our creatures dying. I draw for turn, taking 2 from Mogis, and uptick Ugin to make a spirit token thing. I then pay 1 to cast a morph creature, and then pay another 1 to cast another one, but sadly don't get to draw because Kadena is gone. Chris takes his 2 from Mogis, and is careful of what he taps so he can cast a Consecrated Sphinx. He plays a tap Sacred Foundry, and remembers to draw in a more timely fashion this time from the Elemental Bond trigger. He then passes to Mark. Mark loses his 2 to Mogis on his upkeep, draws, and Chris draws his 2. Mark then plays a Grim Backwoods, and pays 3 mana for Slimefoot, passing. Derek draws, and Chris draws as well, and Derek then plays a Mountain, before dropping a Brash Taunter in his main phase, and he passes to me. I sacrifice my Ugin Spirit to the Mogis trigger rather than take damage, and put the card to hand before playing a Hinterland Harbor in my main phase. I then uptick Ugin again, and I cast Ixidor, and pass to Chris. Chris takes his 2 on his upkeep, and draws. He plays a Carpet of Flowers in his main phase, taking 1 from the Mana Confluence, and then drops a Thespian Stage. He moves to his second main phase, gaining the mana from the carpet after targeting me, and takes 2 from his Ancient Tomb as he casts the Soul of Ravnica. He then draws from the soul coming in from Elemental Bond, and he then has to pass, discarding down to 7. Mark takes 2 from Mogis and draws, with Chris drawing once he's done discarding. Mark then plays an Overgrown Tomb tapped, and puts the Sword of the Anime onto Slimefoot. He swings it at Chris after telling Chris that the land will help him deal with Derek if he lets it go through. Chris agrees, and takes the hit while Mark goes to find a basic. Derek draws, and so does Chris. Derek plays a tap Bajuka Bog, exiling Mark's Yard, and then passing to me. On my upkeep, I sacrifice the Ugin token, getting the card exiles to hand, and drawing for turn, while Chris draws his 2. I play Tainted Isle for turn, and uptick Ugin again because it's working so well for me. I then tap a lot of mana for a Thieving Amalgam, and Chris decides he's not too keen on this, using Sublime Epiphany. He picks the modes to draw a card, counter the spell, bounce a creature to my hand, and make a token copy of his Consecrated Sphinx. This all happens, and I then cast Expedition Map, which Derek responds to once he gains priority. He casts an Arc Bond on his Brash Taunter, and once that's resolved, activates the creature to fight Chris's Soul of Ravnica, which has it taking 6. This means everyone and everything takes 6 damage, effectively wiping the board as well. I then pass to Chris. Chris takes 2 from Mogis and draws for turn. He makes white mana with the Carpet's trigger, and he casts a Council's Judgment in his main phase. He votes to exile the Taunter, while Mark votes for Mogis, and Derek picks the Sword of the Anime. I decide to pick Derek's Soul Ring. These all then get exiled, and we then count up our yards so Chris can confirm that he can cast Avatar of Woe for only 2 black. He then drops a Chaos Wand, and takes 2 from his Ancient Tomb, and 1 from the Confluence, to help activate the wand. He targets Derek with the ability, and Derek exiles until he hits Read the Bones. Chris doesn't want to cast it because life totals are really low right now, but he does remember to draw from the Avatar entering. Chris then plays a Forbidden Orchard for turn, and he passes, discarding down to 7. Mark plays a Forest and pays 2 green for Night's Soil. Chris at this point has finished discarding, one of which is a Sarah's Avatar, which he has to shuffle into his library. Mark then plays Farika and passes to Derek. Derek draws, pays 6 mana to recast his commander, and passes to me. On my upkeep, responding to the Mogis trigger, Chris taps his Forbidden Orchard to give me a spirit token which I can sacrifice to it. I play a Sunken Hollow, and tap the entirety of my lands to cast Expropriate. I vote for an extra turn, while the rest of the table correctly gives me a permanent. I decide to take Farika, Mogis, and the Gilded Lotus. Next up, I uptick Ugin, making a spirit token and exiling a card, and pass to my extra turn. 6 mana is tapped to my extra turn to recast my commander, and it's really nice not to be taking 2 on my upkeep to Mogis. I then play out my free morph creature thanks to Kadena, and draw as it enters. I uptick Ugin once more, making a spirit token thing and exiling a card and passing to Chris. Chris takes 2 to the Mogis trigger and draws for turn. He makes a white with the carpet trigger and plays a fetch land, which isn't great with his life total right now. Chris has to tap his soul ring to help pay for Wrath of God, but does succeed in wiping the board. I get the cards exiled to Ugin's thing as they die, and Chris then takes 1 from Mana Confluence and gives Mark a token from Forbidden Orchard to help cast Teferi Master of Time. He then upticks Teferi, drawing a card, discarding a card, and passing. At the end of turn, I use Putrefy on the Chaos Wand, and Chris hesitantly responds. He takes 2 from the Ancient Tomb to help activate it and spin the wheel. He targets me, and I exile off the top until I hit Cyclonic Rift. He gets to cast it for free, although not in the preferred mode, and he gets to bounce his Gilded Lotus, which I control, back to his hand. Mark also uses this as a chance to use his Night's Soil, exiling 2 creature cards in my graveyard to make a Saproling on his side of the board. Mark announces he'll sacrifice a token to Mogis, and draws before casting Renata in his main phase. He goes to combat, and only realizes once he's swinging that he should have 1 less token, as he goes at me for 1. Mark then passes, with Chris using Teferi at the end of turn. Derek gets his just rewards, taking 2 from his own commander as if he has a choice, and draws, and then casts a Death Pits of Wrath. He casts a Whip Flare, which takes out Mark's creatures, and then passes to me. And at the end of turn, I use my Stolen Pharika to exile my own Wayward Swordtooth in my yard to make an Enchantment Snake token. Chris also decides to use this as a chance to activate Teferi. I untap and draw, down-ticking Ugin to destroy Teferi. Chris activates the Planeswalker to loot, and then the effect happens. I then hardcast Phage from my hand, which has the benefit of making Pharika active. I swing her at Mark, who before moving to blocks, uses Night's Soul twice, exiling 4 creature cards from Chris's yard. He then blocks with one of the Saproling tokens, and I pass to Chris. Chris untaps, and with the Mogis trigger on the stack, he uses Utter End on the Troublesome God. He then taps the Forbidden Orchard to give Mark a Spirit token, but sadly can't get around that Mogis trigger, and dies. Mark untaps and draws. He plays a Forest and drops the Golgari version of Nissa, Nissa of Shadowed Boughs. He upticks her after realizing he should have played the land after casting her, and resolves her ability by untapping a Swamp. He swings the Menacing Land at me, and only 1 token at Derek, and sadly, I get taken out. Derek untaps and draws for turn. He brings back Mogis, and just passes. Mark sacrifices his Spirit token to the Mogis trigger, and draws. He pays 5 mana to recast Slimefoot, and then cast Demonic Tutor to go and find a card. He then upticks Nissa after finishing shuffling his library to untap a land and turn it into a menacing creature. He goes to combat and hits Derek with it. Derek draws and puts enough into the X of Banefire to take out Slimefoot and passes. Mark takes 2 on his upkeep and draws for turn. He counts up his lands and then downticks Nissa to bring back Butcher of Malakir, who comes in with 2 bonus +1/+1 counters. Once that's done, he drops a Creekwood Liege and heads to combat. Mark swings a Saproling at Derek, but before moving to damage, Derek casts Force of Despair to wipe with the Liege and the Butcher. He then takes 1, and in Mark's post-combat main phase, we then see a Reclamation Sage who enters and gets some revenge, blowing up Derek's Rakdos Signet. Derek draws and drops Chandra, Awakened Inferno, and then downticks her to deal 3 to all null and elemental creatures before passing to Mark. Mark takes 2 in his upkeep and draws. He pays 7 to recast Slimefoot, and then uses Nissa to animate another one of his lands. He swings that land at Chandra, who gets taken out, and Mark passes. Derek draws, casts a Painful Quandary, and passes. Mark takes another 2 from Mogis, and draws. He plays a Bayou for turn, adding a counter to Nissa as it enters. He then pays 4 to create a Saproling token with Slimefoot, and upticks Nissa to untap a land, which he uses as he moves to combat. He swings it and his commander at Derek, and Derek takes the hit, and Mark then passes. Derek draws and plays a tap Valakut. He knows when he's beat, giving Mark the fist bump of concession. Game review time. Oof, that was a lot of damage from Mogis, and Chris and I certainly seem to be on the receiving end of a lot of Derek's hate. I always enjoy seeing a great group slug deck, and I think Derek piloted his Mogis deck in this game beautifully. I think unfortunately for Chris, his Morophon Avatar Tribal deck did not perform as well as he wanted. He took a lot of damage from his Ancient Tomb, which really is not what you want when you have an opponent who's really making you sweat with your life total. I think Mark was actually the best suited player in this game, and the fact that Slimefoot drains Mark's opponents for 1 every time he sacrifices a Saproling would have worked beautifully if he'd been able to keep his commander out for more than 1 turn. I think that's why Derek was so afraid of leaving Slimefoot out, because Mark would be really not facing any kind of downside from the Mogis trigger. I'd also like to go down in history as the first player to ever cast Expropriate and not immediately win because of it. But I do love playing Kadena, and I think I might try and build her in the future. So thanks to Derek for letting me borrow the deck in this game. Please be sure to tune in every Monday and Thursday at 11 AM Eastern Standard Time for a guaranteed new video. You can also follow me on Twitter at MTGMuddstah. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/MTGMuddstah. And lastly, you can check me out when I stream at twitch.tv/MTGMuddstah. This video is brought to you in support by my patrons. If you're looking for a way to help out the channel, please be sure to visit the link below. Thank you all for watching this video, and don't forget, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.